Today we are going to fly from KROG to KFYV, a short 15-minute flight in a classic Cessna 172. And for the children of the magenta line, we are going to do this old school. We're not going to use a GPS. So we're going to start off at CROG. We're going to use the VOR to track over the VOR. Then we're going to head off on a specific radial until we join the localizer approach on runway 16 at KFYV. Here at KROG, we are going to take off from runway 20, then we're going to turn left and track the VOR on a course of about 181. We are then going to use the VOR to fly radial until we get to this waypoint here called Elmi, where we are going to turn onto a 168 course to fly a localizer approach to runway 16. So we're going to tune the Razorback VOR into our navigation radio number 1, and we are going to fly over it, and then we're going to fly 6.2 DME away from it on a radial of 222. We are then going to switch to our localizer frequency, and we are going to track the localizer from 11 DME onto runway 16. We know at Elmi we have to be at 3,000 feet, and at Hog, which is the initial approach fix and is 5 DME from the threshold, we need to be at 2,500, and we need to monitor our steps down to the runway. We're not going to fly a stepped approach. We are going to fly a constant descent. We'll be doing about 70 knots, so we'll need to go 350, 400 feet per minute, and we'll watch the PAPIs and adjust that as we go down. So I'm going to arrive at Elmi at 3,000 feet, and then I'm going, which is 11 DME from the runway threshold. I'm then going to descend to 2,500 feet over those 6 DME at Hog, which is the initial approach fix. I'm then going to descend at a constant pace, and I aim to be at Zapco, which is 3.7 DME away. I hope to be at 2,080 feet. At D2.7, I need to be at 1,850 feet, and I must see the runway by then. I'm about 600 feet above the runway. I hope to see it well before that. The missed approach will be to climb to 2,100 feet and then turn right on a heading of 295 up to 4,000 feet, and then join the Razorback 221 radial to fly and hold at Sumo. So here inside the aircraft, I'm going to set the heading indicator to the runway heading. It's a bit annoying, there's no push button to do that. I'm going to set the nav1 to a course of 182, which is my initial track straight to the Razorback VOR, and I'm going to set VOR number 2 just to track the 221 or the 222 radial away from Razorback when I head a bit right to the localizer. Over here, let's set the initial altitude to 3,000 feet. On nav 1, I'm going to tune in the Razorback VOR 116.4, and on standby I'm going to have the localizer frequency, which is 111.9. I've set the second VOR to 221, so I'm going to tune nav 2 into the same Razorback VOR at 116.4. Here I'm going to cheat a little bit. I'm going to put in the localizer IFYV so that I can get DME, because unfortunately the G550 doesn't give you a DME on a localizer. I will, however, set this to standby so that we don't get any help from the magenta line. I will set the bottom screen so we can see the DME, and there you can see it's reading 22.7 miles. Both CDI switches are set to V-lock, and we won't be reading from GPS at all. So here we are taking off from runway 20, and I'll hand fly it until about 800 feet above the runway. So I'll first set the autopilot to heading mode, and then I will put in a vertical speed of 600 feet per minute up to 3,000 feet. Once we're ascending stably, I'll hit the nav button and the airplane should track to the first VOR. So you can see here the needle is a little left of us, which means we are to the right of the track, but probably close enough to let the nav do the job. Let's watch the DME as we track in towards the VOR. So before we get to the VOR, I'm going to get ahead of the aircraft and I'm going to move my heading bug to 221. We are still 4.7 miles from the VOR. So as we go over the VOR, I'm going to hit the heading button just so it gives me time to set my course on nav 1 to 221, and then I'll put it back into nav mode. So I'll spin the top CDI to 221 so that we can track an outward bound radial from the VOR. So our needle is centered on a 221 course. We're watching the DME and we are 3.6 nautical miles away from the VOR, and we know we need to turn left at 6.2 DME from the VOR. So here we are at 5.2 miles away, and I'm going to switch to the localizer frequency. I don't want to overshoot the mark, and I want to capture that localizer. Now you can see the autopilot is turning us onto that 168 course in line with the runway. I probably descended to 2,500 feet a bit too soon, and I'm now going to stay there until I get to 5 DME. My speed is good and I'm coming up to 5 DME, so I'll set the autopilot to descend at about 400 feet per minute. I've set my altitude to 1800, otherwise vertical speed descent will not work. Speed is good and we're descending at about 400 feet per minute, and I can see the runway. I have my descent profile written out and I'm monitoring the DME and my altitude, and so far we are spot on. I have the runway clearly in sight and I could disconnect the autopilot now and do a visual landing, but I'll let the autopilot take us to within 200 feet of the runway. So that's how you do a localizer approach, and in the next video I will do the exact same flight with a GS1000 Cessna.